My name is Megan Lotz, and I'm the art librarian at Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, and I've been here about 12 and a half years now. But in truth, I was born and raised in the Midwest, and having been here in Jersey, though, as long as I am, I think of myself as an East Coast light version of my former Midwestern self. Oops, let's see. Oh, hold on. I'm having trouble with my forwarding myself. Oh, there we go. All right, on this
All
slide
right.
above, you'll see my bio, which can be found on my website. I will not read. On this slide, you will have the abstract for today's presentation, and I'll send the slide deck to Amy after the presentation in the event that you would like a copy, and certainly you may contact me if you'd like a copy. This next slide, it's going to give you an idea of what the next hour is going to look like. I'll basically speak for about 40 minutes. We'll talk about what you learned. I'll wrap up, and then we'll ideally have about 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A. And unless we've got any other questions before we get started, we will go ahead and begin. All right. So I want to start with a little story today. And this is just a little short story. And it starts with on October 3rd, 2015, my partner and I loaded up a Ford Escape with 100 pounds of Lego, our 2 dogs, a ton of snacks. And the project ended on Friday, November 13th, 2015, after traveling 5,675 miles, visiting 19 academic library organizations across 7 states. And we facilitated 20 workshops, which included 245 participants. The aim of this project was to educate individuals about the low-cost hands-on maker spaces in academic libraries. As well, we introduced individuals to the ideas of engaging play and creativity in our everyday work. And perhaps most important, our workshops really honed teamwork and bolstered community building. At the beginning of one of the Lego workshops, at a very high administrative level, walked into the room. He looked at me. He loudly stated in front of everyone he was very unhappy about attending this workshop and shared to me that, and everyone else, that, well, he had real work to do. Yet the workshop continued. Roughly 90 minutes later, that same individual came up to me, gave me one of the biggest bear hugs I've ever received, and then apologized for their former actions and noted that they were so glad that they had been forced to attend this event. They confessed clearly that they needed to play and that they were in shock that their group, who had had a long-standing library problem, was able to solve it in less than 90 minutes over a table full of toys. In truth, I tell you this story because I've spent a lot of my career as a faculty member and teaching librarian, embracing creativity, play, and non-traditional innovative learning. And I do meet naysayers. But today I'm going to share some of the ideas, and I hope that you leave feeling inspired and ready to think more about how you might embrace creativity and play, especially when it comes to working in teams. Oh, and for some reason it keeps... we'll get there. There we go. All right. And I want to start with 2 definitions. First, we're going to talk about creativity. Creativity isn't a superpower, but it does involve thinking on multiple levels and making unusual connections between things that are not always related. And sometimes it's referred to as thinking outside the box. When looking up creativity in the dictionary, one mostly finds words used as a noun and generally described as the state of being or a mindset, which is often tied to imagination or the arts. Ken Robinson, a top scholar on the topic, talks about creativity as applied imagination. Basically, he thinks of imagination as the idea and creativity as the action. Creativity often starts with brainstorming, doodling, or playing with ideas, but the point is to do something and to connect ideas in ways we should not thought of before. And these don't need to be original ideas, but perhaps they're just original to the creator, to the organization. However, it is really important to recognize that sometimes creativity involves constraints, and most individuals and organizations will have ideas beyond what's possible. I have ideas beyond what's possible, but we'll talk a little bit later how we keep a journal of those ideas. But also, we have to be realistic and acknowledge that one size does not fit all, and what works at one library or an organization might not work for another. So it really all depends on the resources that you have on hand and the needs of your community. So let's talk a little bit about play. By its very nature, play is also hard to define. You know it when you see it or you experience it. You can make a list of emotions that you might experience when playing, but it's almost impossible to say exactly what it is. It can be an action, an ephemeral experience. It can take place alone or in a community. It can be quiet or loud. And it also often involves learning by doing. Both a noun and a verb, the word play can describe a dramatic performance, a move in a game, engaging in enjoyable activity, or simply joking around. In fact, there are 9 pages devoted to the term in the Oxford English Dictionary, where it's noted that the word has often been used as a catch-all for virtually every type of behavior that does not seem to serve a purpose of some immediate goal or directed purpose. Play and creativity belong in libraries for many reasons, including the fact that the skills play strengthen are needed for library employees, but they're also needed by library patrons and researchers. So the concepts fueling creativity and play are both infinitely flexible, and in truth, they're lenses through which we can see and concepts that we are applied to almost any situation. We can find creativity and play in museums, in libraries, in playgrounds, on classrooms. Because these powerful tools are ways of thinking, they really truly encourage humans to connect, learn, and engage. In libraries and in museums, we see toy collections, which reflect the benefit that play supports physical, cognitive, social, emotional development and promotes well-being. Other organizations engage creative and playful outreach and marketing strategies to reach out there to their communities in exciting ways, bringing new users into their physical and virtual spaces. At some libraries, they're playfully activating underused liminal spaces, which are transitional spaces such as stairwells or corridors. We also see play specifically represented in so many ways, including cosplay, games, game collections, maker spaces, creative art therapies, also known as CATs, health and wellness initiatives, and in truth, so much more. And there's no limit to the places creativity and play can be found in libraries and organizations if we as employees embrace our imaginations, let go, feel the flow, and engage with the process. One of the greatest misconceptions about creativity and play is that it can only happen in a prescribed space, including technology, fancy furniture, or fresh paint. And I'm here to tell you this is simply not true. I can confirm this because when it comes to my job in the art library, I have no money, I have no authority, and our walls are desperate for paint. Play and creativity don't have a look. It's about the learning and the engagement happening in any given space. Being, thinking, or working in a creative or playful manner can happen anywhere. But these places and spaces need to be flexible and adaptable so that whatever needs to happen can happen. And never more have I seen this idea revealed as libraries continue to navigate a pandemic, endemic, or I think now we are in that maybe endemic stage. But events, programs, services, and ideas we never thought virtually possible changed, and they were transformed, and sometimes from the better as we've moved more into a virtual world. Therefore, perhaps it's times that we can rethink who libraries are, and maybe even put behind some of those traditional services or programs, which maybe aren't having the impact that they once were having. But also, never more have we needed physical and virtual welcoming spaces like libraries that are places where we come to be together, to be creative, and to play. So let's talk about flow for a minute. Many definitions of play say it's an activity that has no purpose, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have benefits. Yet in truth, we play because it's fun. Sometimes play experiences even been energizing and they're transformative, and they help us get into the flow. And the concept of flow was identified in the 1970s by a psychologist to describe a mental state in which one is fully immersed or focused on the task at hand, sometimes even losing track of time. After engaging in play, my partner will often ask, "What time is it?" And then he'll exclaim, "I was having so much fun, I lost track of time." And this is an indication that he was experiencing a flow state, likely learning something and probably having a good time. For myself, I describe entering flow as the moment when my body takes over and my brain follows. This might be when I'm swimming laps at the pool, playing a game, walking my dog, curled up on the couch with my iPad, working on a digital drawing project, or maybe when I'm writing a paper or looking at something at work. The key really is reaching a state of flow is often balancing intuitive, reflective action and conscious thought. In flow state, people often describe losing their anxieties about an activity and letting the process take over. Also, let's keep in mind that there's no such thing as failure. We learn from all experiences. They help us guide in what comes next. With every project, event, service, really anything you're working on, ask questions, think about the outcomes. Regularly ask yourself, what did you learn? What might you do different next time? And let's not take ourselves too seriously and get lost in what we have done in the past or what we can't do. Let's focus on what's possible now and the opportunities that are right in front of us. And it's important to try something new and not get caught up in the preciousness or the fine details. Oh, sorry. And let's face it, working together can be hard, especially when we work in spaces and places where people have different responsibilities and jobs. At Rutgers University Libraries, we have employees who are faculty, staff, we have student workers, and then we have this whole other different level of individuals that share a whole wide range of jobs. We also share jobs with other organizations across campuses. Some of us have to be on campus every day, and some of us can work from home. Despite being an organization who's trying hard to embrace DEIA initiatives, we regularly struggle on this front, in particular when it comes to equity. And although many of us report to different bosses, we are still on the same team. And maintaining morale and civility can be hard. Then throw in something like a pandemic, or a lack of funding, or lack of employees, and things can really turn upside down. And in my own work, and as someone who leads from the bottom up, it's important to keep your audience in mind, keep your teammates engaged, and don't create any wheels that already exist elsewhere. And for those that lead, encourage creativity and play. So another aspect that can help us in our work and requires teamwork and collaboration is turning outward. And this is about getting in the flow of your users, allowing your user needs to inform and influence your priorities. And this can be tough, no doubt, when the priorities at one library or organization are unique and different than everyone else's. For this, I encourage you to physically and virtually visit community spaces and don't expect or assume that your users will come to you. Learn about your community needs, find out what they care about, what makes them tick. And I think many organizations assume that they know what their patrons needs, but sometimes it's better to let your community help lead your vision. Collaborate, work together as one, find common goals, figure out how to help and support each other. And this is crucial when staffing and budgets are dwindling. But also from my experiences, when partners or collaborators are involved, it's easier to get buy-in for ideas. There's better attendance at events or higher uses of services. And I encourage us all to think about how we communicate and work together to make sure that every library isn't trying to regularly reinvent the wheel, when maybe another library or organization has an extra wheel or idea that they could spare. And in truth, partnering with other libraries, library employees, other organizations outside of our spaces is how we will continue to keep our spaces, libraries, museums, organizations afloat, in particular, as our budgets and our staffs continue to dwindle. So one of the things that I want to keep in mind is how to keep track of all this work, and particularly when we're all incredibly busy. When working on tasks or ideas, there are multiple pieces to every pie, and we need to keep track of this. Personally, I use a creativity model like what you see on the slide, which involves refining problems, questioning, analyzing, generating ideas, recognizing knowledge that can both help and hinder an activity, program, or service, as well as identifying potential surmounting obstacles. In truth, the creativity worksheet is a playful exercise in itself. But also, I keep a virtual and physical space to collect ideas. As a wise drawing teacher once told me, you keep a book of ideas for the days that you don't have any. But also, a physical or a virtual idea journal or notebook can be a great place to revisit when you're looking for an unknown solution, which you may have already figured out for another idea or a project. Whoops. Also, we don't have to do it, pardon me. Also, we can't do any of this without some assessment. And I won't sugarcoat it. Assessing play and creativity can seem hard, but it doesn't have to be. And one important aspect when it comes to assessment is thinking of terms of impact, as opposed to trying to determine if something is successful or not. Success is a word that's impossible to define, because what you think of as success might be different from mine. or the person sitting next to you. Or maybe one day what feels like success doesn't feel like success the next day. We need to have goals as well as indicators that will help us reach our goals. And note that sometimes we'll have multiple goals, short-term goals, long-term goals. A diverse range of assessment can provide rich content and images that make for dynamic and interesting ways to show how libraries engage with their patrons. And sometimes simply asking what people learned at the end of a meeting or event can provide rich data, which can help one prioritize what's possible or what might come next. And speaking of what comes next, we're now going to move from the pedagogical part of this presentation and look at some playful experiences that I've created throughout my career as a librarian. So the first project that we're going to talk about is Woodblock Woodstock. This was a public event open to everyone at Southern Illinois University at Carbondale campus, and I partnered with 2 colleagues from Special Collections and University Archives, as well as worked with the printmaking department and 2 artists from the Drive-By Press. Our goal was to elevate the arts, show off the work of our local printmakers, and highlight Special Collections and University Archives collection regarding the evolution of print. We included in this project an exhibit at SKUA. The Drive-By Press gave 2 lectures, studio critiques for design students, and a rocking on-site presentation press demonstration on the front porch of Morris Library. And overall, this project was high impact, in part because we kept the team who worked with the project small. We spent a lot of time brainstorming. We were able to keep it light and fun, as well as get the buzz out about the Drive-By Press coming to campus and to Morris Library long before the event started. And this got people excited. And we had hundreds of people show up to the front to have a print made out of the back of a Honda Element. The next project we'll talk about is the International Edible Books Festival. And I'd love to see show of hands or make a comment in the chat if you've done an edible book festival before. These are very popular events for all types of libraries. And at Rutgers, this is a collaboration with the Art Library. Yes, Lorraine, yay. This is a collaboration with the Art Library, the Art and Design bookmaking courses, and we host this at Alexander Library, and we've even been known to get dining services involved. And believe it or not, we're able to highlight many collections, as well as discuss the idea of preservation and unique items found in SKUA. And this isn't an expensive event to run, and I'll note we've done this in years, and it's likely time to revisit. We had this happen a lot before the pandemic, and then we kind of closed it down because honestly, about the 3rd year that we did it, I noticed that, that buzz just wasn't there anymore. And I'm here to tell you, don't run an idea into a ground. Shelf it, put it away for a few years, make people want it, and then bring it back. And that gets people excited. On this slide here, you'll see Old Mango and the Peas, a Clockwork Orange, and the orange actually ran off the acid of the acidity of the orange. We have Grapes of Wrath, and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. At the Rutgers University Art Library, we also have exhibit spaces, which I'll refer to as rails, and they're very popular at the Art Library, and we've had many audiences, and our exhibits are both open to all. We host wall exhibits, case exhibits, pop-up exhibits. As well, we have a digital and audio exhibits, and we just use our monitor that we advertise things on. And basically, we'll entertain anything that does not damage or burn down the art library. And remember, we can do that because we need a fresh coat of paint, so it doesn't really matter what happens to our walls beyond we don't want to burn the space down. We do have a small committee of library folks who approve exhibits, but everything else is done in-house. There are a variety of goals with our exhibits, which can include learning about the library's collection or learning about a topic specific. We even have a permanent exhibit that we rotate in should we have a month with no artist on the schedule. And many exhibitors have learned about installing an exhibit from creation to consumption, including installation, marketing, and reception planning. And these are lifelong learning skills and ideas that can be used in many facets of life. And these are key for our students in particular. In around 12 years at Rutgers, I have partnered with over 78 organizations local to the university in the city of New Brunswick, New Jersey, where the Art Library is located. And as well, organizations throughout the state and beyond have shown work in our spaces. And because this is such a low-cost space, and me or my reference assistant do most of the work, I haven't had to get too much buy-in, but also I regularly create reports and show the impact that keeps these spaces running. But we keep it simple because it's a homegrown teaching space. And for some exhibitions, this is their first time showing their work. And again, we want it to be playful and fun. And lastly, because these spaces, I have formed deeper connections to the departments with whom I liaise. But honestly, this has turned the art library into a hot spot and a place that people want to become. And really, in truth, we have elevated the importance of scholarly research being created in the arts on the Rutgers campuses and throughout the local communities. We also have living artists, and these experiences are important because we are a state-funded university and all of our instances are open to the public. And we don't, for these, always have goals specific because we really try to tie these experiences back to the mission of the libraries and to our collections and services. On this page, you'll see Orange Duo, which is a group from Argentina who ended up in our space because they had someone cancel their space at the last minute. And we said, sure, we're welcome to have you. And this brought in a whole new audience that was available to come and see what the art library is about. In the middle, you'll see Peter and Donna Thomas. And those of you that work in the book artist, from some, these are known as artists who are the kind of brainchild or founders from California of book arts. And this is their traveling art mobile. And they show up in front of my house, they spend the night, and then they come on campus and they show all their cool works, what they do. And what I love about these folks is they were tiny home living before tiny homes were even a thing. Then lastly, we have here Hub City Opera. And this is an organization that started about 5 years ago in New Brunswick. And it just so happens that a lot of the individuals as part of this organization are part of Rutgers. Well, we actually showed this particular performance was a sneak peek for their upcoming opera, but it also was kind of an offhanded place where people could leave a donation in a hat and they were able to raise money. And quite frankly, the library did not need to be involved because as a government organization, that would be outside of something that we could do. I also want to talk about embedded librarianship, and this is nothing new, and this can happen in many ways. And this isn't really just about librarianship. I was telling my students who at their first day of class yesterday about the pop-up Megans, which you'll see one of 7 cardboard Megans here standing with me on the slide. And I was talking to them about creating a brand, about creating a space where people can feel safe through just the idea of seeing a cardboard person. But in truth, I put these in the lobbies of the departments with which I serve and the place where I often also host reference hours. And I get incredible emails where people are like, oh, I saw cardboard you in the lobby. It reminded me I have a question. And suddenly they have 3 or 4 questions. But what this piece of cardboard does is it engages an audience. It engages the space, that it gets you into their space 24/7. I am a librarian that is in the lobby 24/7 of many of the departments I work with. And this is very important. And then they know when I show up with swag and when I show up with candy and buttons, that they're there to ask me questions and that I'm actually there to help. I've quadrupled my engagement and how many people that I work with and see every semester. And it is really, truly outstanding. In 2014, I encountered Lego Serious Play at the I2C2 Innovation, Inspiration, and Creativity Conference in Manchester, UK. When I got back home from the conference, actually from the conference, I called my partner and said, oh, you have to get Lego. He was working at a company called 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And from that job, believe it or not, he was able to rescue me over 400 pounds of Lego that was going to be sent to the dumpster. Anyone that has children who loves Legos, those AFOL adult fans, knows that 400 pounds of Lego is like worth a small collection of library resources and events. So I want you to be creative. Once I started this work with Lego, I then suddenly had all these alumni and all these people coming to the art library saying, oh my gosh, my children, they're 30, they're 40s. I heard these incredible stories about their children, how they went to Rutgers, how much they love this organization, and thank you for taking this 30 to 40 pound dusty Lego off their hands. I have written extensively about all this work, even how to clean, how to process, and how to deal with all this. But in truth, over the years, we have hosted something silly like 46 events for less than $100. And of course, this is excluding the cost of labor. And you'll hear me say this over and over again. I don't have money, but I have creativity, I have innovation, and I'm playful. We also have 3,600 pictures of the Lego playing station that we installed in the art library. And this has been a space where people critically come to think, solve problems, and hone their 3D building skills. And I really want to encourage you, get some Lego. If you're concerned about them being stolen, they might be. Bits and pieces go missing here and there, but you can also have them boxes at the circulation desk, which is also what we do. So let's talk a little bit about the Art Library coloring book. And I created this because students were basically bored with these one-shot bibliographic sessions where I come in, I talk about somewhat interesting information literacy, but if you want the truth, I was bored too. Students want a memorable experience. Community wants something memorable, and they want to learn how to do something more than learn a database. And the majority of the individuals that I work with are makers and visual learners. So I wanted a hands-on self-directed learning experience that was unique and fun. The cost to print the 500 coloring books was fairly inexpensive, and we hosted a pop-up coloring makerspace to release the books, which were gone in less than 3 weeks. And another idea that I want to note is crucial to the publicity of any project is that we're fortunate to have local media sources such as Rutgers Today. They created a video, the Daily Targum supported us, the campus newspapers wrote an article, and I'm a firm believer, get to know your PR folks, ask about their children, ask about their passions, what they love. They will help you sell your message and also in turn do what you can for them. They love a good story, and libraries always have a good story to share. And it'll also help you share your own story message and get more people at your events. So in truth, keep in mind when you're planning any event, how to tie it back to the libraries and how to grow and highlight your collections. And in the sense of the coloring book project, we were able to showcase Interaction of Color, which is a quintessential text in the arts created by Joseph Albers in 1963. And we have one of the 2,000 original copies created by Albers himself. Also in the spring of 2019, we released 3 new coloring books geared towards our preschool, elementary, and preteens. And if you want the truth, we were asked to create these because we had a group one semester of a bunch of loud and rowdy young children, K through 12s, that kept showing up. And they were there with their parents studying. So basically, this was a way for someone to politely go to the parent and say, oh, would your child like a creativity or an activity book? And we felt that this was maybe a less aggressive way to engage with someone, to politely say, hey, how about an activity for your kid who's running around the library and disturbing people? Now, this perhaps isn't uncommon at a public library, but we don't see a lot of kids in academic libraries. So this was very ruffling to many of my colleagues' feathers. And I found that also kind of fascinating. But also, this was an opportunity for special collections and university archives to make creative coloring pages. And probably many of you have coloring pages at this point. There's the huge organization that collects them, and you'll be able to find a lot of that information virtually as well. The Rutgers University Art Library button making initiative started small and has become a force to be reckoned with, in part because everybody loves making buttons. Whether it's branding the libraries, highlighting a collection, a service, a personal button commemorating the end of a project, we can and we will make a button for everything. And in truth, I wasn't sure what we were going to do when we purchased the button machine, but I really expected good things. Then we started hosting events and making buttons with our patrons. Now we use the machine to teach copyright, visual literacy, information literacy, and so much more, like finding images. We can talk about a student when they find and come to our event with a copyrighted image that, well, maybe in this case, they're not going to sell it, but think about that. And we can really talk about library research, but also we're able to highlight so many of our collections and services to mission. It's been an incredible way to get our special collections out of the basement and into the flow of our users. We now have a button making listserv of over 130 names on it. And we've partnered with over 600 organizations across the campuses. And we've made over 48,000 buttons. Now, I say this because, first of all, it's a little bonkers, but it only costs us about 8 cents, and maybe even less now, because the bigger bulk you buy, the cheaper it becomes. But this 8 cents of goodwill that we're buying with a student or a faculty member or a staff, means so much. And we can afford 8 cents per person. And in truth, button making, what I love about it is it's not a high risk activity, but oh my gosh, it is high impact. So In the past few years, we've been exploring the world of zines throughout the Rutgers University libraries. And as an artist myself, I've been making zines like crazy. But also working with zines makes sense for the Rutgers New Brunswick Libraries, New Brunswick, because we house zines in the women's artist collections, again, in special collections. As well, we have them in our popular culture collections. Zine projects can happen in a variety of ways. You can host a zine making event where you invite patrons to create their own zines and DIY crafting materials, which can be crowdsourced from library staff. About 10 years ago, I sent out a note, does anyone have any craft supplies they don't want? 10 years later, I still have a hoard of craft supplies. But once you do that once, then things start showing up in the mail, and sometimes it's really good stuff. Zines can also be used to teach visual literacy and storytelling for classes, for communities, for underrepresented communities that have a story they want to tell. And also, zines can be used as a tool for publicity. In 2019, I created the Art Library zine as in a response to our corporate looking brochures that I throw out by the hundreds every semester. And I ran some focus groups with the art and design students and the art students. And they loved the zines. They took them apart. They looked at them. They wanted to know what stories they could share. They liked that they could put it in a pocket, and they wanted one to give to a friend. And nothing is more important than peer-on-peer learning. We listen to our peers. When some peer tells you the libraries are awesome, you listen to them. And lastly, we use the zine sometimes as a making and a folding break during a bibliographic course. When I see students start to zone out, I know it's time to do something with our hands. We spend 3 minutes, they fold the zine that I printed out for them, and they're actually doing the work, so my student work or I don't have to fold them. And I'd also like to note, we've even been doing zine works with people around the world. I've been in Doha, Qatar, in the Middle East doing this work with Carnegie Mellon Libraries, and there are incredible zine organizations. If this is something you're interested in, the zine making community is powerful, incredible, and very welcoming to all individuals. Now, one thing I'm going to point out from my own life as an artist is if you're looking for a fun way to distribute your zines or your tiny imprints, install a little zine vending machine. And in this side, you're going to see me at the Virginia Library Association conference, where as part of my keynote presentation, I installed a vending machine which sold tiny prints for $1. These prints were drawings that I made in honor and created from images of the Samuel Public Library, which was the Virginia Library winner of Library of the Year. And I'm here to tell you folks, we're not going to solve any budget crisis at $1 a pop at a vending machine. But this is a clever way to support artists, build goodwill, highlight your collections, and keep your community coming back for more. We've also done an incredible work with urban sketching. And this is a project that has really been a way to think about scholarly research in new and exciting ways. And really, urban sketching is very similar to scholarly research because both activity of scholarly research and drawing rely on observation, analysis, storytelling, and advancing the work of one's discipline. Very few individuals I know, beyond my work as an academic library, would claim to be experts in scholarly research. And this is the same for artists when sketching. And in truth, this was an incredible way during COVID when our libraries were closed for almost 18 months to collect and connect with our users. We invited people to draw what was happening in their house. What did they have for lunch? I mean, lunch was about the highlight of my day when we were stuck at home, many of us during COVID. So this was a way to draw, to be creative, and to engage with others. We've also done a lot of work with instant photography. My students, faculty, and staff, and our public love our instant photography cameras. The old school, the new school, we have printers, we have all sorts of stuff. But really for us in the art library, this has been an incredible way for us to highlight our photography collections, which is a collection that's incredibly important to us and something that we're strong in. But again, students go wild when they look at this old school camera that shoots out a photo on the moment. Most recently, I've been exploring painting rocks. And you know what? I was working with the health sciences program on a mental health art breaks, and we took all these fancy sketching supplies, all these fancy pens and pencils. And in the end, everybody went bonkers for painting rocks. And I loved this. Simply, they made portraits of themselves. We've got Harry Potter, we've got Snoopy, we've got ladybugs, you name it, we can see it on a rock. But what was so fascinating is the students kept going on and on about, I don't have painted rocks. I've never done this before, or I don't have these kind of supplies here on campus, and this is something that I don't have access to. And I love something that simple. Some of them left it for a painted rock garden. Some of them took them and made them for others. And I think that that's really charming. Now, when I thought about play in New York State, I kept coming back to your one and only, and that's the Strong National Museum of Play, which is located in Rochester. And if you haven't been there, try to get there. And if you simply don't have time or there's nowhere near where you live, check them out online. I can't remember the last time my partner and I had so much fun when we visited the museum. We could have spent days, weeks exploring their collections. And if anything, you'll leave inspired and no doubt have experienced a trip to Memory Town, where you walk, if anything, through their historical collection of games. Now, I want to talk very quickly about drawing skills and how to spice up a meeting, an event, or a talk or something to help build some community. And one of the things that I often do is before the start of a meeting, I'll give a drawing prompt. In this case, we might say, I'd like everyone to draw your favorite breakfast. And this just gives everyone about 90 seconds to draw their breakfast. And I'm here to tell you, there is no skill involved in this. Everyone's breakfast looks different. What everyone likes looks different. I often will hear people say, I can't even draw a stick figure. You've set me up to fail. But in truth, I remind people that drawing your favorite breakfast is for fun. It's not serious. You don't have to create the Mona Lisa. And then for people that get really anxious, I introduce them to 6-line drawing. And often they'll say, oh, well, 6-line drawing is math. I understand math. And that gives them a way to be creative. And I like that in particular when it comes to our scientists. And I will note another prompt that I use particularly with my students is I ask them to draw their favorite holiday. And I work in a very diverse university, so we have a lot of people from all over the world. And I'll never forget the day where a young woman from India drew the beach. And she was so upset because, of course, all the American students had drawn Christmas trees, birthday, some things involving presents. But for her, holiday meant going to the beach and getting away. And this is a great way for us to talk about diversity and remembering that language is important and we can learn a lot from simply drawing something as simple as our favorite breakfast or holiday. Now, what I want to talk next is 6-word stories. And this is a special mix of poetry and storytelling. And this is, again, just for 6 words to add punctuation to share an idea, an event, or moment. Now, for a 6-word story, it has to make sense to the reader and has to take the reader on a journey. And it has to read the reader with an emotion. Some say the most famous 6-word story is frequently credited to Ernest Hemingway, though there's little evidence that he wrote it. It is, and many of you may notice, For Sale, Baby Shoes Never Worn. And I'm going to give you a couple more quick examples. To Be or Not to Be, William Shakespeare. Think and Wonder, Wonder and Think, Dr. Seuss. It's Been a Hard Day's Night, The Beatles. Now, what I'd like you all to do, grab a quick pen and paper, grab your phone, something you can type in. And I would like you to create a 6-word story. You have 1 minute. And the topic is, what makes your library awesome? And again, you have 60 seconds. And when you're done, I would love it if you would share your 6-word story in the chat. So when I do this with students, I do a lot of 6-word students with students. And one of the things that I really think about is often I have very frazzled graduate students and researchers that come in and I stop them and I say, "Ooh, chill out. Let's think about your thesis because you just told me 8 like graduate thesis papers." And we talk about 6-word stories and we narrow it down and we have some fun. When I do this literally with groups of 300 and 400 people, the room erupts with excitement because we all have a story to tell. And sometimes we only have 6 words worth of time. So again, share your 6-word story. What makes your library awesome? And please feel free to keep doing that. And I love everything that I'm seeing here. And you know what? Here's what I have to say to you. Sometimes you got to add a 7th word. Breaking the rules is okay. And that's what I love too. Don't let yourself get caught up with, hey, it's 6 words. A 7th word isn't going to hurt you. Or maybe you only needed 5. So another thing that's really important as we come to the end of the session is I want you to think about what you've learned today. Now, I again would like you to spend the next minute writing down 3 things that you learned today. Type it on your phone, type it on the computer, type it in the chat. I really would love it if every single one of us, the 55 of us here today, shared one thing you learned today. That is so powerful. And what's powerful about this is when I'm in smaller classes or in events with maybe 20, 25 people, we go around the room and everybody shares one out loud. And this is when the magic really starts to happen. We learn again best from our peers, and sometimes hearing what someone else learned helps remind us what we learned. So, does anybody want to share out loud something that they've learned today? Again, share in the chat. What did you learn? All right, so I'm going to encourage you to keep thinking about what you learned. And again, I want you to think about this as a tactic for assessment. The last keynote session I did with 600 people. I walked away with almost 1,800 comments at the end of a 50-minute session. And I got to hear what people learned, not what I told them they learned. And I want you to really think about that. Let people tell you what they learned. Don't tell them what they learned. There's nothing really DEIA or equitable about that. And I think that that's something that's really important to think about. So why does any of this matter? Well, today we learned a lot about the pedagogy behind creativity and play. We looked at many examples of where to find play. And let's circle back. Why does this matter? Play and creativity strengthens ties with our local communities and surrounding neighborhoods, which builds goodwill for libraries. Play encourages engagement, which helps form partnerships and promotes cross-disciplinary collaboration, which can bring new users into your libraries, museums, public spaces, civic spaces, organizations in general. And you can't learn from a book, but you can learn from a playful, creative, ephemeral experience or virtual experience with a library employee or another human being. Playful events can provide hands-on learning experiences, which can hone problem-solving skills, which are tools that are essential when performing library research. And working together as a community means we can rely on each other, if anything, for fiscal and labor support, but also when times are hard. And you don't need a lot of money to engage play or be creative when it comes to services or events. Be resourceful, work together. And lastly, being playful, engaging creativity, and turning outward can help libraries and organizations tell their stories in interesting ways, which shows their impact among their communities. So finally, I'd like to encourage you all to think more about play and creativity and how to incorporate this into your own work and into your everyday lives as human beings, because we have to take care of ourselves too. And I'd like you to think back to that story that I told at the beginning of my presentation. And I want to remind everyone that although playing creativity might initially feel awkward and not right, it might feel strange, or it's maybe something that you just don't have time for. It really is truly important to get outside of our comfort zones and to learn what might be possible. This is how we think, this is how we innovate, and this is how we advance the missions of our libraries and our organizations without burning out. I would like to thank you all so much for your time today. If you'd like to learn more about my work, you can do so in my 2 books. And I want to remind you that I will go back one slide. You don't have to buy the books. Go to your public library. This is in a lot of places. Use interlibrary loan, borrow from others. And I'm here to tell you, if you really do have issues accessing, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And again, thank you all for your time, your attention. Please feel free to contact me at any time with questions. And does anybody have any questions or comments now? And I just have to say one more thing. I can't tell you how hard it was to finish those last couple slides. It's like, so all these things rolling through on the chat that you might be learning. It is so important to me to hear what people are learning and thinking about, because that helps me inform the future. And I hope that does you now. So thank you again so much. I am going to stop sharing so that I can get back to a point where I can see you all in front of me. So who has questions today? Comments, thoughts? What are you up to in the play field in yourself? What are your ideas? What have you always wanted to do? Maybe you haven't done yet. Let's talk.
It was great seeing everybody what they're learning, because it actually like made me think more concretely too, like seeing everyone's takeaway about more concretely about how to put some of these into action too. And somebody
You,
did mention that April 1st is Edible Book Day. So to be on the lookout for that. And someone else mentioned that the Strong Museum of Play has a bunch of ideas on their website too.
they are amazing. And you know what? I just want to say too, I really was fortunate when I was on sabbatical writing the playbook. I got to spend some time chatting with one of their archivists and librarians. Boy, I talk about it a little bit in my book, but that place is crazy cool. I mean, they have like terabytes, like they have all of Atari stuff. That shows you my age. I'm a baby of the 70s, but I'm like, everything Atari, everything from that company when it went dissolved. And I think that that's wild. But yeah, I could go on and on.
So if
But
anybody has
virtually,
any,
it's there.
if anyone has questions, feel free to unmute yourself if you want, or you can chat it in. I have one question I'll kick us off with. I don't want to take time away from anyone else, but I was curious about your vending machine. Did you purchase it, the tiny vending machine, or did you make it?
Oh gosh. You know, that's funny that you say that. I'm like, I suspect if I went to a really cool makerspace here on campus and I was like, I need a vending machine, I suspect with time that we could probably print something like that out. But in truth, just to kind of give you an idea of numbers, and this is funny enough, this is not the only vending machine I own, but that's the artist in me. This one cost, I think, around $500, and then it's yours for life. It comes, you can have it free if you want it to be a free thing where anyone can come in and you don't need quarters.
Mhm.
Or you can have it to cost up to $1.50. This one, again, I keep looking to the left because it's sitting right next to me. I often use it as a because if anyone that knows me, or if you end up on any of my social media, you'll see that I have an incredibly active drawing practice as an artist in my life as an art librarian and as an artist. And I wanted a way to get zines out to people for $1 clever. But I also really want to bring back this idea of hands-on sharing, caring. You know, I chuckled. We made $83, I think, for Samuel Public Library. But the moments that I spent at the Virginia Library Conference with people around that vending machine, that's what it really is. It's a water cooler. If anybody follows, I follow an artist in Ciardi, I believe, out of New York City. She's gotten so popular with her tiny prints. Like she has 30 or 40 of these all over the globe where people are buying tiny artist prints for $1. So, you know, it's something you can do with your own work. It's something you can do for artists in your community or just something for fun. But yeah, it was just kind of a clever thing. I was like, what else can I distribute out of this? It's been a lot of fun. I've done a couple former vending projects in libraries where we gave away tiny prints and things in the little vending bubbles that you see. Again, wildly popular, great way to support artists, poets, you name it. And it's a one-time cost. Same thing as the button maker. $500, you're buying in, it's yours for life.
Our button maker was gold at my public library. Everybody loved it.
So,
It brings everyone to you.
yeah, it does. You know, somebody once said in the lecture I listened to before we got ours, they said, you know, our button maker, if you know how much one weighs, they're like, if it buys its weight in gold. And it is true. People flock. All you have to hear is clunk. But, you know, like students are like, I needed to do that. My student worker, when she's had a rough day, she's making buttons in my office. And it's just fun to listen to her. Like, I can hear her relaxing with how less aggressive just by having this even activity of making. So I find there's something charming in that too.
Let's see here. So any questions from anyone? I just want to make sure we address anything that anyone wants to ask before we close out today.
You know, and I want to point out too
Lots of
that
thank
we
yous. Mhm.
sometimes thank you all again so much for your time and attention. And again, I'm not joking. When anybody that knows me, I love to talk. I will respond to your emails if you send them. If you have any questions at any time, but I do want to go to that point. You know, sometimes we just need to give ourselves permission to play. I'm here to tell you, we are all worth it. We are worth the 5 minutes a day. I teach this play class, and I gave my students all their play journals yesterday. And I was like, you know what? Give yourself 5 minutes a day. You earned it. You owe it. You got this time to do whatever you want. And it'll change your life. And people write about this from all different sorts of fields. And, you know, if you're feeling down at work, try and engage a little play and creativity, even if it's just for a break for yourself, because it can help you get by sometimes when things are hard.
I completely agree. And Ray just shared they're having a peep show, so dioramas using peep
Yes,
marshmallows, which I think is a wonderful idea. So,
absolutely. Everybody loves Peeps, and anything that goes silly viral like that too, I absolutely love.
all right, if we don't have any more questions, I just want to thank you again, Megan. This was really fun for me. And I'm excited to sort of put some of these things into practice too. Hopefully everyone else is. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us. I'll send out the recording later. I know a few people had to leave early and were asking about it. So that'll be coming, and get in touch with Megan if you do have more questions. You've got all our info.